Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 47 in the series. I have Spencer with me today, once again, and we also have two dogs in the room. We're going to start barking right now. It's taken us about 15 takes to get to this point, so we're going to try to roll with it a little bit and just live with the weird sounds of growling and bone chewing in the background. Just hope they're not destroying anything.
At one point, they were about to lay down in a nice sweater that was out to dry.
Oh God.
But
anyway,
it's been moved.
Hi. So we just got back from a wedding in Arizona last weekend.
This is true.
Our oldest got married, and we went to Phoenix, which was like 60 degrees, and then we went to Flagstaff, where it was snowing and 30 something. It was crazy. We danced the night away. Everyone had a good time. Family showed up. It was rocking. And we're back now. Work is almost over. Semester's almost over. I'm seeing if the dogs are gonna go crazy. And Spencer wanted to come on to talk about his sweater plans.
I have some questions about sweaters.
So,
I have a few questions and a few problems. After
the last episode, 2 episodes ago, where he came on we were on the prison bus. You didn't come on the prison bus. I came on your prison bus.
Future home.
And we talked about men's knitting. There were some great responses to that episode, by the way, and I'm hoping to get a men's knitting interview up on the blog pretty soon. But I think it kind of inspired you a little bit to like get going on a sweater.
I felt like I've been slacking off on my knitting for a few years. So we're like in the cold of winter where it gets dark at about 4 o'clock, and I haven't been working outside as much, and I've been just kind of like laying around inside doing nothing at night. So
we play some games and whatnot.
Yeah.
And cook some food. He's making really good soup.
It's been unproductive. Anyway, I decided I want to make a sweater. I've had this sweater in mind for a couple years that I wanted. I kind of wanted Melissa to make it for me, but she's got so many damn other sweaters she's always knitting that I'm going to knit it myself. But here's my plan. All right, here's my plan, and I got a few questions. My plan is to knit the easy stuff and have her take care of the hard stuff.
Kind of like the old days when women would do piecework and they get sent a sweater in pieces. Like, here's the sleeves and here's the body. Okay. Now you just finish the yoke.
I hadn't thought of it like a really sexist enterprise. It was more like you were going to help me.
I know, and I will help you. I will enjoy helping you.
Okay, anyway.
But he doesn't follow patterns. I think if you've watched this podcast long enough, you know that Spencer's way of doing things is like...
Right, so I thought I could just knit the tubey stuff. You know, like I can go round and round and round, knit the tube. She can do all the funky stuff up here, sleeves and short rows or whatever. Short rows?
In the back.
Yeah, okay.
And, yeah, sleeve caps if you want them.
I'll take some of those.
Okay.
At least 2. And then maybe I think I could do the sleeves with the reduction together
you can
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I will it'll be like a joint project, but I'll knit most of it. Anyway, so I was going to get started on this, and I asked her for some needles because last time she loaned me needles, the dog ate them.
I was still willing. I gave him metal needles.
And anyway, she gave me some needles, and then she said I needed a sketch.
Swatch. Oh, and a sketch.
Sketch.
And some
sketch swatch. Okay, so I sketched it out, and
did you bring it up here?
I have some video of the sketch you can probably put in right here.
Okay.
I sketched it out really sketchy. 2 versions. One with just a regular collar, one with a kind of like a Henley collar.
You got it.
And we decided to go with a Henley with a bunch of distressed little holes and patches and stuff. And and then she said I needed a swatch. All right, now here's my question.
So we went stash diving, and he chose this.
Stash diving.
This is Brooklyn Tweed Arbor in the color Sashiko.
It's kind of green. I thought it was more blue.
And I thought it was a lighter blue because I picked it for a Norgon cable sweater, and I just don't think it'll show the cable, so I was really happy that Spencer's going to use it for his funky
She had like 30 skeins of this stuff.
I had a lot because I was making a women's cable sweater, so for a men's plain sweater, it's actually just about right.
All right, so she said I needed a Squach.
Squatch?
and
that's what we should call this episode.
This is so screwed up.
Squatch.
Okay, so she said I needed a Squatch, and she gave me these size 4 needles. I squatched the hell out of that thing. Look, I was squatching all night long.
This says to use needles a little bit bigger.
Right. I was squatching all night long, squatching away, and I finished it up. I threw it to her. She was on the other couch. I threw it to her. She looked at it for 2 seconds and said, "Too dense."
I didn't say too dense. I said, this is a dense fabric. Is this what you're going for?
which I didn't know the answer to. I was like, I don't know. And then she said it's gonna wear like an aluminum can. Like if I put it on, it's gonna be like a trash can with holes stuck out of it. It'll be so stiff. So stiff. So now I've got to re-squatch.
But wait, before that, you're like,
so frustrating.
But look at the stitches, they're all even. I'm like, that's tension. Your tension is beautiful. Your tension
I was pretty
beautiful.
tense when I was knitting it.
Plus you made an L-shaped Squatch.
Alright, I don't want to talk about that. I started doing a big Squatch and then we reduced it to like a
regular Squatch. Anyway.
Regular size Squatch.
So you're going to re-squatch.
But here's the deal. I don't see how you guys do all the squatching. It's like all your mojo, your knitting mojo that's going to go towards the sweater ends up in the Squatch, and then you have to re-squatch, and it ends up in the second one.
But your
and by
Squatch
then,
is like this big.
My winter's over by the time I'm done with that.
This is what I said to him. I said, if you lose your mojo after this much,
oh my God.
I worry. I worry about the sweater.
But the reason it was so slow is you're knitting, and then you got to purl back. Then you're knitting, and you purl, and the purling back is
about halfway through the Squatch, he said, can I do this in the round? And I said, yes, there are ways to do swatches in the round, but I don't think that's what you want to be doing right now.
Like a sock squatch? How would you do in the round?
Well, you could have with double pointed needles, but you can also do a swatch in the round by letting your thread kind of hang in the back across and just kind of go back, and then
I wasn't gonna do that.
It's just loose in the back.
I don't want a whole drapey thing going on.
Plus, your tension, your gauge for like a knit purl like back and forth flat knitting versus just straight knitting for circular. It'd be slightly different, but it's not going to be that different.
All right. Well, it's
for the purposes of this sweater.
It's going to be a badass sweater. I'm not totally deterred yet, but anyway, I just wanted to get. I wanted to come on your podcast to get a little bit of advice. Like, what do I need to know to succeed in knitting this sweater?
Stamina, man. Some serious mojo stamina.
Really?
Yeah.
Like knitting stamina.
Yeah.
Like,
well, okay,
like
so
an hour a day kind of stamina?
Yeah, if you could do an hour a day, that would be amazing. I mean, he remembered all the knit stitches, how to do the purl. He dropped some stitches and picked them up. He did the bind off. He did the cast on all by himself. Like, I was really impressed.
You're talking about that, like the toddler who went to the bathroom by themselves.
He did mumble and mutter to himself like the entire time.
It pissed me off.
It was so slow. It was the kind of muttering that was kind of like, please come help me. But then when I'd say, do you need help? He'd be like, no, I don't need help.
No, I had it.
So he like asked for help, but he wanted to just
I think I want to do it. I think by the time I get to the neck, I might decide I'm going to do it all myself.
No, wait, is this going to turn into another sweater pillow?
No. This is going to be a sweater. This is going to be a hardcore sweater I wear all the time.
Awesome.
I can tell.
I support you.
Already.
And the hemling's going to be nice. You're going to do like a little bit of a tall collar, right? Like, you hate it when I do this. He hates it so much. But like, you're going to do a kind of stand-up-y kind of collar, you think?
I think so. I think I might go double.
Sorry.
Like one kind of yarn on the inside, one on the outside. Yeah. A little different color kind of thing. And that might match some of the other color stuff. It's called the Tattoo Sweater, by the way. You can look for the pattern in 2020 on Melissa's Ravelry page.
He did say that since I'm writing the pattern for his sweater, that I could size it if I wanted to.
There was a little intellectual property stuff going on.
Right now. Is it? Okay, there we go. Right, so the tattoo sweater may appear as a pattern sometime soon once I
just have to get it off the needles.
Get it on the needles.
Just have to get it on the needles. I just have to cast off.
What did you say? You said at the end when you ripped out the whole swatch.
My bind on was weird.
Your bind on.
My bind on was all jacked up.
He got like his pocket knife out to cut the yarn. It was a huge clunk of yarn. I was like, no, don't do that. So then he realized you could just pop one little stitch and the whole thing unraveled.
Anyway, it's cool. I'm into it. It'll be done soon. Probably by the next podcast I'll be wearing it.
That would be so cool. Unlikely, but cool.
Anyway, check me out on YouTube. Matta Spencer. I'm redesigning a prison bus right now. It's going a little slow, but
I think all these folkies really know you pretty well by now.
I don't need to advertise. All right, sign up for my spring classes then. Enrollment's low.
What are the spring classes?
Got a comic book class and a class about typewriters.
Oh, that's cool. I'm teaching about science studies and science fiction.
Sounds nerdy.
Yeah. Just neither we teach in an English department, but neither of us teaches English.
All right, thanks for having me on the podcast.
It was lovely to have you. Episode 47. Here we go. It's always fun to have Spencer on the podcast, and since at the end he was kind of introducing himself, and he's Matta Spencer on YouTube and all around the internet, I forgot to tell you who I am. I'm Melissa, Knitting the Stash. Most of you know me because you're coming back for more, which is awesome. And if you don't know me, I can be found just about everywhere as Knitting the Stash on YouTube and Ravelry, Instagram, and on the blog, which is knittingthestash.wordpress.com. And in rest of today's episode, I have 2 whips in progress that I kind of need some advice about modifications for. So this is like, I want to hear from you guys, like what you think I should do. I have a review of NIT Stars 3.0, and I have found an old video clip of some wool washing yarn that I want to put in here and make sure you guys know about them. And then we of course have the giveaway at the end. Okay, so the first whip I have for you is the Dark Purl Cardigan by Carol Feller, which I fell in love with when I was in Cologne, Germany, and bought the pattern and bought the yarn at the Garn store while I was there, and I loved that store. They had so much great stuff. I would go back to Cologne just to like shop at that store. And I bought all my Titus there, and I love her. Her original is done in a beautiful kind of slate gray Titus. This is the Bantam colorway, which is a kind of deep red, which is really quite pretty. And I'm trying to be modest here. The thing about this cardigan is that it doesn't have a front yet, and that's what I need help with. I've finished the whole thing. So this is, the back is all finished, all the way up. It's a raglan design, top down. You work on the back panel and the front left panel? Yes, the front left panel, which is over here, and it's all finished. And then I just did the sleeves because I wanted to have the sleeves done. So the sleeves are all finished, but it has no front. Now, in the pattern for the front, let me pull it up so that I can show you what it looks like in her version. So in Carol Feller's version of the pattern, this is what the front looks like. I think you'll be able to see it pretty well there. It is a really drapey kind of front that is elongated on the top and shorter, less wide toward the bottom. And basically what you do is you pick up your stitches over here on the right hand side, which is just kind of sitting here, and you knit this way. It's a lace panel, and you knit more increases at the top than you do at the bottom, so that you end up with extra kind of fabric up here, so that when you want to close it, you would have like 3 buttons up here, and you would just kind of like attach it 3 ways, and it would have a kind of drapey thing at the top, and then the panel kind of sits more flat as you go down. Now, on the one hand, this is why I fell in love with the pattern, because it really is beautiful to see the lace panel kind of work its way across the front. The drape of this yarn is gorgeous because it is 30% alpaca and 70% British wool, which means it's 50% Wensleydale and 20% BFL or blue-faced luster. So it has 70% long wool, which is going to have the luster and a drape and less elasticity and kind of like memory. And it has the alpaca, which has 0 like elasticity and memory if you've ever knit with alpaca. So you blend the 2 together and you get this beautiful kind of drapey fabric. And I cannot wait to wear this sweater. I think you can see, hopefully, the way the stitches are coming out. I mean, it's just a beautiful weight for a cardigan. I just want to like throw it on and wear it. But I'm just not convinced that that front is going to be super practical. Not that you have to knit sweaters to be practical. I've knit plenty of impractical sweaters. But I've looked at a lot of the project pages on Ravelry, and a lot of folks said either they did knit it the way that it says to in the pattern, and they didn't end up wearing it very much. Some people said they actually gave it away. Other people did some modifications to make a flat panel across the front. So it's a little tricky because you don't want to just not do the increases over the bust area, and you want it to sit kind of flat if you went that route. So it's a little trickier than just knit a flat panel across. But I'm not convinced. And what I'm thinking is I want to nod to this original design in some way, but I'm kind of thinking of maybe adding more of a panel, like a regular old stockinette panel, kind of like this panel across here, and then maybe doing just a lace panel in the front. I don't know, maybe it has buttons on either side, maybe it is just a real small strip and the button band is on one side of it. I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this modification. Usually I come on here and I tell you about my modifications, but this time I'm kind of stuck in the middle of like, what do I want to do? And I actually put this sweater in a bag I had some other knits I needed to pick up, some other samples that I'm doing. But this has been sitting in a bag for about a week or two, and as I've been thinking through it, because I do think it's really important, if you're not convinced that the sweater you're knitting is going to be just what you want in the end, that you should stop, take some time, finish off what you're working on so you leave yourself at a good place. Like, I know where I'm at in the pattern. I know that all that's left is to figure out this front panel. So if you get to a place like that, you can set it aside and really think about what's going on. I wrote down my needle sizes, I wrote down my little notes to myself, but I would love your advice. Like, what do you think is going to make this sweater not totally like boring and practical, but at least maybe more wearable for me? If you have advice, I'd love to hear it. The other whip I have, which I've been considering modifications for, is it's called Brittanys Buttoned Cowl, and it's by Kefren Pritchett. And Kefren Pritchett, I've had her on the blog a number of times. She's answered a bunch of designer kind of questions for us, like how-tos and kind of like a, you know, day in the life, and kind of like what is it like to be a designer, and what kinds of things do you think about. So she's really great. She's also a technical editor. She has tons of patterns that have come out in different magazines. You've definitely seen her patterns on Knit Picks, in Interweave Knits, you know, all the major magazines. You've seen her stuff. And I knit her sand shawl pretty recently, and there are pictures of it up on my Ravelry project page. So I love the sand shawl. I really like her style and her aesthetic. And this is Brittanys Buttoned Cowl. And you can see it's this gorgeous kind of cable and lace mashup. So the lace panels are here, and they kind of intersect or bisect these beautiful kind of simple cable patterns. It's simple to knit. If you can follow a chart, and even if you can't follow a chart, she has some written out instructions, you can knit this. And it's super squishy and soft, and it's meant to be a cowl. The way she styles it is pretty long. She uses 1 or 2 skeins, and she styles it almost like this, so that the other side kind of comes and hangs over here, and there's a button band here, and you'd put buttons on the other side. So that really is a nice kind of warm cowl that would lay very flat underneath a coat. I think that's super practical. Modifications I was considering, though, were to make it just like a regular old cowl, you know, like knit about half of the size and then finish it with a button band, or buttons on the opposite side, and kind of, you know, just have it be a regular old cowl. I think I'm going to go for the full length, though. I think I'm actually going to do this pattern without any modification. And Kefren, if you're watching, you know that is a high compliment, high praise indeed. I'm pretty happy with the way this is turning out. And the yarn I'm using is, let's see if I have it in here. The yarn I'm using is actually a Knit Crate yarn. And Knit Crate sends me yarn once a month. And sometimes I try it out and sometimes I don't, but I tell you guys about it when I really like it, and when I think it's kind of cool. So this is the, let me get it right, Yarn Fairy and the Pixies Elf Merino. And it is a beautiful non-superwash merino, 288 yards per 100 grams, and this stylet is brushed steel. I think you can see it. It's a really gorgeous gray. And it's almost like a gray purple, and when you knit it up, it just shines so nicely in this kind of cowly lace cable pattern. And it's super soft, and it's a non-superwash merino, which they're not that easy to find in kind of like indie dyer yarns, because a lot of indie dyers use superwash, or let's see, they use silks or other things that really pick up the dye a little bit more. So that, you know, if they're indie dyers, their thing is the dye. A lot of them use really beautiful bases, but a lot of those bases are superwash. So it's cool to find a non-superwash base for this particular project. So Kefren, I think I'm gonna go with it. When I knit her sand shell, I did a big modification on the border, and she was excited. She said, "Tell me what you're gonna modify." So of course I did, and I posted about it on the blog. But Kefren, I think I'm gonna keep this one just straight. Just gonna knit it straight because I'm really enjoying it. But I'd love to know what you guys think modification-wise for either of these whips. They're in progress, and I will take your advice to heart. So please let me know what you think. So the next thing for today's episode is a little review of NIT Stars 3.0. Now, I have not been compensated for this review. I was not gifted the course. This is all just, I bought it and I paid for it and I've been watching it and I want to tell you about it because it actually fulfilled my expectations differently than I expected. So for those of you who don't know or haven't heard about NIT Stars, Shelly Brander, who owns Loops Yarn Shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma, has been kind of putting together these, what she's calling kind of summits, where she'll put together like 10 or 12 different, usually they're designers of one kind or another. They're kind of like the NIT Stars. They're kind of like the big names in knitting. And she'll go to where they are. She does interviews with them, and then they do a kind of lesson. There are free patterns, there's exclusive yarn, there's all kinds of bells and whistles. And when NIT Stars #1 and #2 came out, I was kind of curious because it kind of hit the web and all the places that I am on social media pretty hard. And I was kind of like, this is an interesting model to kind of take you to the people as opposed to like via video, as opposed to you having to travel to them. That was kind of the way they were selling it. And I wasn't all that interested in the lineups for 1 and 2, not because they're not cool people, but because I had encountered them in various ways in Craftsy classes, through YouTube, through their designs, other things like that. So I didn't feel as compelled to kind of sign up for those two. When #3 came out, it's called North Star Rising, and she put together a group of people that it was kind of hard to say no to. Arnie and Carlos are on there, and I'm going to pull up a few of the names just so that you can get a sense of who's on there so far. And the course started November 26th, and every couple days they're kind of releasing a new video. So as I was saying, Arnie and Carlos, Vera Velmaki, Mason Dixon Knitting, Anne and Kay are on there. Anne Budd is on there. Crystal Safarth is on there so far. And what I actually have found that I like about this series is that a lot of times these designers, especially I was thinking of like Crystal Safarth's lesson that she taught about shawls and color work, or Vera Velmaki or Arnie and Carlos, all of those folks, what they're teaching is like their philosophy about knitting. They're teaching about how they approach things. They're teaching kind of tips and tricks to get things done, and the way they think about things. So Crystal Safarth's classes, she just was very empowering in terms of like, I'm going to do a lot of color work, I'm going to change colors a lot of times, and I'm never going to weave in ends. I don't do that. She's like, I don't knit purl rows, I don't weave in ends, I don't, but I'm still going to do a lot of color work. And so she just has these kinds of methods for doing things. So these aren't classes where you're, so far at least, they're not classes where there's a pattern and they're taking you step by step through the pattern, so much as they're saying like, here's a free pattern, as part of the class. Here are the techniques and the ideas behind the pattern. Here's how you do color work intarsia with short rows instead of having to weave in a lot of ends and clip your yarn all the time. There's some things in there that were really cool to learn, and I like those classes that aren't so much like step by step by step, because I feel like I don't need those classes anymore. I just really want to get into the mindset of like, who are you as a knitter? How do you do what you do, and why do you do what you do? So if you're into that kind of way of thinking, then I think NIT Stars 3.0 would be good for you. I have taken a bunch of Craftsy classes as well, and I love Craftsy as a platform. And I also signed up for School of Sweet Georgia at one point and did some one of her color work classes over there, Felicia Lowe, which is really brilliant stuff going on over there as well. So I'm a sucker for a class. I love learning from people rather than from books. I can learn from books, but I'd much rather learn on YouTube or from these classes. And I have taken Craftsy classes where it's like a step-by-step, here's the pattern. My first cable sweater was that way. I took a class with Carol Feller online in Craftsy and, did the sweater from soup to nuts. And I needed it at that point, and that's what I really wanted. I could rewind the video and see exactly how she was doing things and kind of watch each stitch. But this NIT Stars 3.0 isn't really like that. It really is much more about philosophy and about the kind of like bigger technical how-to questions. You want to do a colorwork shawl? Well, how do you do it without purling and without knitting in ends or weaving in ends? Like, well, there's a way. And I've enjoyed the quality of these videos is really great, and you get to keep them, which is pretty cool. They must have a huge server somewhere. I'm not sure how that's going on. So that's my kind of review of this so far. We're about halfway through this mini summit series for 3.0. I don't know that I'd go back and buy 2 and 1. But, you know, if I ever had like a lot of money or lying around and nothing to do with it, maybe I would. I think it's pretty important to me to find one of these knit stars that actually had a lineup where I really wanted to meet these knitters and designers that I hadn't really encountered all that much before in the past. And so this was a great opportunity for that. So that's my kind of review of it. I'd be really curious to know how many of you have signed up for 1, 2, or 3 of the Knit Stars summits, what you thought about them. Because I was really skeptical at first, and I'm pretty happy with number 3. I've been really enjoying being able to sign in and kind of like take these classes at my own pace. But I'm a teacher and a professor and I love classes. So there's the other half of the rub. But let me know. I really want to know if you guys have taken Knit Stars 1, 2, or 3 and what you think of them. So share below in a comment. That would be awesome. Okay, I found a lost clip of a review that I did of O Wool O Washing yarn and their story, so I'm going to put that in here because I think you guys might enjoy it. We were talking about non-superwash yarn, and this is a wonderful yarn line that's non-superwash yarn for the most part. So I'll put that clip in here, and then we'll come back and do the giveaway and our goodbyes. So you guys know that I often test or sample knit for Albina of LB Hand Knits, and really enjoy a lot of her patterns. I've talked about them on the podcast quite a bit. She and I have had a nice exchange going on, not only in terms of design, but in terms of yarn. And she's located in Ireland, I'm in the US, and so we've had a nice kind of exchange going back and forth. At one point I sent her some Targi and some other hand spun, and she sent me some beautiful Irish indie dyers. So it's been a fun little yarn exchange that we've got going on. Well, recently she asked me a question in email about a company called O Wool, and specifically their O Washing line of yarn. And so I went and kind of checked it out. And O Wool has a pretty interesting story, and part of that story is this O Washing variety of yarn that they have. And it's called O Wash if you're looking it up. So O Wool O Wash. And the O Wash yarn is one of these yarns that's washable. It's a wool yarn, a merino wool yarn that's washable, but it's not treated like a superwash yarn. They treat this yarn using an enzyme that helps to keep the fibers from felting in the washing machine. Now supposedly this process is more environmentally friendly, and I first heard about a similar kind of process. I think it's the same kind of process for this base of yarn from Anna of the Dunkelgrund podcast. She did a whole podcast segment on superwash yarns and how superwash yarns are produced and some of the environmental impacts of them. And you guys know from watching this podcast that I'm neither pro nor anti superwash yarn. I'm very much interested in the yarn story, and I think there are some real life pro and con to superwash yarn, and it's something that if you're a knitter, at least I hope you're aware of. And if you're not, I'll post some links in the show notes so that you can learn a little bit more about the superwash process and what superwash yarn is. So Albina pointed me to this O Wash yarn, and I purchased a little bit of it, and I'm going to make some noise here, from Jocelyn of O Wool, which is the yarn shop. And Jocelyn and I got to talking a little bit, and I mentioned that I was going to send some of her yarn off to Ireland, and I did some reading on all of her, about her yarn story and some of her frequently asked questions, and I thought it was worth sharing with you guys here. So this is the yarn I purchased, and Jocelyn was so kind as to wrap it up beautifully. And here are just a few of the colors. I picked up some, I'm going to pull up here. I picked up some DK and some fingering weight, in part because Albina was interested in the fingering weight yarn, and this is a little not so secret, I guess, anymore gift that's going off to her, but hopefully by the time this airs, I will have sent this off to her and she will have received it already. So these are 2 colors in the fingering weight O Wool O Wash yarn. And Albina's, she likes kind of sagey colors and grays, so I thought these 2 might be a good color combo for her. So this is the fingering weight yarn. It is a 2-ply yarn.
And this is the colorway Gorge, and this is Green Ash. And I also bought for myself, I figured as long as I'm buying a little bit of this yarn to try out, I bought some sport weight for myself in the colorway Spring House. And this is partially because I've been doing a lot of sweater design with DK or sport weight yarn. I think it's a good middle of the road yarn that's not a chunky worsted. It's not a fingering weight. You know, it's a good, I like it for sweaters. I think it's pretty versatile, and it's the kind of yarn that's versatile not only for sweaters but for accessories. That's anyway, long story short. So this is the DK weight of O-Wool O-Wash Sport. And I thought I would just share this with you guys because it's a pretty interesting yarn story that Jocelyn has. And if you go to her website, she explains a lot about why she sources the yarn the way that she does, why she chooses the O-Wool, or why she chooses the O-Wash base, and what that is. She also sources merino. If you go to her kind of frequently asked questions, she sources merino and cotton that's organic whenever possible. She sources the merino from South America and alpaca from a local farm near her in Philadelphia, and her cotton comes from the US, I think. So her yarn is spun in Boston and it is dyed in Philadelphia near her home, and she's really interested in a lot of the mills and the millwork that are kind of around her. Some of the older mills that are still in production are the ones that do the dyeing for her in Philadelphia, and it just, you know, she seems like one of these wool sellers who's very conscientious about not only how the animals are treated, but how and where the yarn is produced and what kinds of chemical processes it goes through. It's just I think it's a really interesting story, and I'm really glad Albina turned me on to at least checking out what's going on with her. So I'm going to send these off to Albina for fun, and who knows, maybe she'll end up designing a pattern with that wool. I'm going to play around with the sport weight and do a little swatching and have some fun, but I'd love to design a sweater in this and maybe get Jocelyn involved in that whole process if she's interested. And the other thing is I'm trying to do a blog spot with Jocelyn, so hopefully that interview will come out sometime this fall and you can read a little bit more about her and her thinking on yarn and her yarn story, just to try to spread the love here a little bit and introduce you guys to another yarnista out there who is doing some cool things with wool. So that is O-Wool O-Washing and another quick yarn story for you. All right, that is just about it for today, but to wrap up, I wanted to talk about that last giveaway from episode 46, which was a beautiful pattern from Perry, who's P. Winkle on Ravelry. She donated a pattern for the giveaway on the podcast, and it was a shawl called The Feel of Wind on Water, and I'll put a little picture of it in here so that you can see it. If you're interested in getting the shawl, you can get 20% off with the code KTS, like knitting the stash 20 in Ravelry. But our winner from all of the entries was Stephanie, and she is Étoile Lune Soleil on Ravelry, which is Star Moon Sun, which I kind of like very much. So Stephanie, congratulations on winning the pattern. I've sent you a message in Ravelry so that you can get your coupon code and pick up that pattern. And yeah, congratulations. And thanks to everyone who entered and who talked about some of the beautiful yarn or yarn combinations, colors that you would use for that shawl. It was really inspiring to hear all of your different ideas. So thank you. And with that, I think we'll sign off for the episode 47 for the week. And I'm gonna go get some lunch and have some meetings, and it'll be another day. I hope you guys have some fun knitting in between now and when I see you again. And yeah, take care.
All right, welcome to Knitting the Stash, the podcast where you learn about knitting, fiber, and stuff like that. I don't know how to start your podcast.
That was good. I'm Melissa. This is Spencer. He's not always on here, but sometimes he is. And we also have two dogs that roam around the house, like this one, named Millie, who just opened the door.
Can we start over? I'll let them both in. You
Let me get taped.
You gotta let them both in.
Yeah, come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Good job.
Just try it. No. Fuck. Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and it's actually taken us 15 takes to get to this point. This is episode 47. We have 2 dogs in the yarn room. This is Spencer. We're gonna try.